let me just quickly introduce here. Right next to me is Ali Seth. And Ali Seth, right here, just joined a company called Vimark. And these people are doing IoT technology to make smart factories, smart cities, smart manufacturing. He'll tell us more about that. Ali spent last 20 years as the president of Renaissance Electronics America, REA. And so he's a senior vice president of Renaissance Corporation when he ran the IoT division. They're making chips for IoT applications. And next to that, we have Nader Fathi. He's the founder CEO of a company called Kiana Analytics. And Kiana Analytics is trying to make the whole process of retail valuable, insightful, and convert your visitors into customers. So Kiana Analytics, and Nader will talk more about that. And then we have Nidhi. Nidhi Kalra is for Rand Corporation. She's the director of some unusual titles here. It's the Big Data Fusion practice. And actually, Nidhi is the senior information scientist and created in the center of decision making under uncertainty. I love that title. So she's a researcher, and a lot of her research is about autonomous vehicle and how cities will be transformed with IoT technology, and she's going to tell us more about that. And finally, we have Mashood Alam. He's an SAP senior director, and he's an expert in design thinking and how to transform companies by a new way of innovation. He advises several companies in Pakistan as well. So we have an interesting panel. So let's start by hearing their perspective. What is IoT and what the work they do, how that makes it relevant. So let's start in some random order, which is least expected. Nader, what is IoT in your view, and what is your company doing to change the world in some ways?
Sure. So we live in a society which we generate lots and lots of data. A lot of this data is dark data that we don't know about. And IoT to me is about how do we grab all this data, how do we bring it together, and how do we make sense out of it. That's really my vision of IoT.
So Nidhi, what about this autonomous vehicles? We keep hearing about them. What are they? How are they going to change us? Are they even coming?
They are definitely coming, and they're fundamentally cars that drive themselves, either a little or eventually a lot and entirely. And it's really exciting stuff because, right now our cities are designed for the automobile, a conventional sedan. But with the advent of autonomous vehicles in the next few years, in the next decades, we're going to see our cities transform from being built around the automobile, I hope, to being built around the needs of people, and that's all enabled by the IoT in autonomous vehicles.
So autonomous vehicle is not just about the vehicle, it's about the roads have to be different, lanes have to be different, exits have to be different.
That's part of it, but really it's the opportunity that we can have the mobility that we need with far fewer vehicles on the road that travel much more efficiently. I mean, if you think about it, we have such low vehicle occupancy. A car is designed for 4 or 5 people. Usually there's only one. What if every car was designed or matched with the exact number of occupants and was extremely efficient and was electric or hydrogen, things that our conventional thinking on how we own and use cars don't enable. And that means we can totally transform our cities if we think big enough.
So Mashood, tell us what is, you never think of IoT and SAP in the same breath. Demystify that. What is your work and how is it relevant?
Okay, so SAP, as you might know, every 3 out of $4 in global economy is touched by SAP systems. So we help run world's largest organizations. And those organizations are not just the technology organizations, those are oil and gas companies, those are any product that you have in your hand has a lot of components to it. And all those components are manufactured through a process, gone through a plant, gone through a warehouse, and then through distribution channel, and you receive it. SAP software and applications help run that. So coming to IoT, if you look at how these companies manufacture and distribute a lot of these products, so what you had to do in the past was essentially go to the asset that you have, whether it's a truck, whether it's a compressor, whether it's a manufacturing step, you essentially had to go and see what the readings are, what the measurements are. Now, what IoT is essentially doing is helping all these assets speak to us rather than we go and inquire them. So imagine if you are selling, you are using a compressor, which is a common equipment that is used in a lot of these plants. That compressor will be able to tell you what is its pressure level, what is its other metrics, which are tens and hundreds in some cases, and that data is being generated tremendously. Then that data needs to be linked with all the other factors, your human resources who are working on it, your processes, and how the shipment is going to be delivered to your customers. So all those processes are being reimagined through our work that we are doing.
So the point is that this compressor should be able to tell you, send you a text message, come fix me, I'm feeling ill, I may break down in 2 weeks.
Well, the thing is, that is just the start. What we are doing is the compressor, and not only the compressor, the equipment or the asset before it and after it also tells us, and the weather information that is around there. And then you're able to have a machine learning based system which predicts that that compressor is about to go down. And in these $1 million equipments and multi-million-dollar plants, if one equipment goes down, that has a huge impact on the business. So before it goes down, if you are able to send a worker out there through your process, and then that worker is able to fix that before it goes down, that's a huge impact.
By the way, if you can hear okay in the back, if not, raise your hand, don't be shy, we'll fix it.
We don't see it.
So, no, I can see that, I can see that. So, Ali, this brings us to smart manufacturing, and tell us more about Wimoc and what are they doing? How is video enters IoT world?
Sure, just a little perspective first on IoT so that I can...
You may have to speak up, even I can hear you.
Oh, really? Maybe it's the microphone. So just a little complementary perspective to my colleagues. Machines, so the T in IoT stands for machines. And if you think of machines, they have very small compute power, very little memory, virtually no operating system. Think of a treadmill, think of a washer dryer. And in comparison, your smartphone has a lot of processing power, a lot of memory, and a very strong operating system that does a lot for you. IoT enables these machines that have very little compute power to be connected to the cloud and now have access to virtually limitless compute power, limitless or unlimited memory, and unlimited operating systems and intelligence. Now, to get back to Naeem's question on Wimoc, when machines get connected and have access to all this unlimited resources, you can now apply artificial intelligence, neural networks, and very sophisticated algorithms that just until today were only available on workstations and mainframes. So at our company, Wimoc, what we do is we bring that level of compute power to the edge. So for critical applications like factory floors or where safety, human safety is concerned, we compute, we perform the AI locally at the edge so that very reliable, instant, real-time decisions can be made.
Great, thanks. Good perspective to start with. So IoT, unlike many other technologies, is all about use cases. Each use case dictates a different set of sensors and software to analyze it. So my own company, IntelliSense, we are focusing on food safety. Before you sit down to eat at a restaurant, you want to ask the question, is this fish safe? What was the history? Where was it caught? How was it shipped? And this is what we're creating a food safety passport by tracking the temperature and the environment by the time it was caught in New Zealand, shipped to New York, trucked to Sacramento, now bought at Safeway. So this is where we're going. There's a new law, Food Safety Modernization Act, which is insisting that traction is tracked. So this is an unusual application for IoT devices. What are some of the use cases you see which is unique to you, which should be shared with people, which may not be obvious? So Kiana, Nader,
Sure.
Kiana is looking at some very interesting use cases. Tell us.
Yes, so we all carry these devices called cell phones. How many people have one of these devices? You all do, right? I mean, actually, average person on Earth now owns 3.2 of these devices. That's a lot of phones and devices. So we, as a society, are the greatest example of IoT. We are submitting all sorts of information from these devices. The first thing I did this morning when I came to this convention center was to turn on my Wi-Fi because I want to be connected. I want to know what's going on. When you do that, basically the access point in the building captures 3 important points about my device. Number one is a unique Wi-Fi identification. It captures my distance. It knows how far I am from the access point. Based on that, it can tell me if I'm in this hall or the next hall, and the timestamp. So with that, what can you do? So this has really what started our company, Kiana. About 3.5 years ago, a company called Fortinet, which is a big Wi-Fi company, called us and they said, hey, we have a lot of dark data, can you help us? I have never heard of the term dark data, but it was very interesting. So they told me about, hey, they have 250,000 devices around the globe and they're collecting a lot of data and they're deleting it. So one of the application of this is in retail. As you all know, Amazon is eating all the retailers' lunch, right? I mean, you're seeing stores closing after each other. So retailers really are interested to see, hey, what is really your behavior? Where do they go, right? Like, for example, today, the retailers which are very successful are the ones who have restaurants and entertainment in there. People just don't go to stores to buy something. I can do this on Amazon. So how do I get people to go there? Other example, retailers are interested to see how many people pass by the window, how many people stop and look at, let's say, the blue bag versus the red bag, and how many of those go in, right? So being able to read the mind of the customer is huge, right? Now you can take this data a little bit further and you say, you know what, I'm interested to see who are the desirable and undesirable, right? So if I have a VIP, a frequent shopper, they usually spend 40% more than somebody like me who's just walking around, right? So the stores want to know that you are a VIP. They bring in the red carpet, in some cases bring the champagne or whatever, right, to get you in there to spend more money. So these are the examples of IoT devices that we all carry on our pocket.
Just try to get more meaning out of the all the data already available. And this is again, Nidhi, give us a use case, how our life will change as IoT is deployed, how the cities will change. Go deeper.
So at RAND, we are a nonprofit think tank, essentially. We do research and in particular try to improve public policy. So our question is, okay, technology and IoT is here, it's accelerating. What is it going to mean for us and how do we take best advantage of it? So one of the challenges of that question with autonomous vehicles is they're not on the road yet. So in a way what we're asking is, if you take yourselves back to like 1990, right, when the internet was sort of first becoming a thing in our lives, and ask the question, well, what are you going to do with the internet? No one could really answer that question, and yet it's limitless. And that's kind of the same way that we have to think about autonomous vehicles, because we are limited by our imaginations. It's changing the way that vehicles are designed. The question is, what does a person do in the vehicle if they no longer have to drive? And one might say, okay, they read a book, they do things that the other passengers do. But now imagine your vehicle is completely redesigned, because now you can have a movie theater, you can have a VR system. I mean, I think you might throw up in there, I don't know. But it completely changes. And so what we're asking is, what does this mean for the way cities are designed? And a lot of it has to do with the intersection of tech and policy, like urban planning. For example, if we no longer need parking because we have autonomous Ubers or autonomous Lyfts circulating around, providing all of us with transportation, what are we going to do with the parking structures, like the one I'm sure most of us parked out here? What would you do with it if you didn't need it? And in an area like this, that might not seem like too important a question, but in downtown San Francisco, that's an enormously important question. What are you going to do with that space? And what this allows us to do is reimagine our cities. We often, in urban planning, don't get a chance to correct mistakes. Once it's built, you're done. And this is a chance to redo almost everything about the way we get around and the way we use our land. And it is, forgive me, it's hard to imagine what we can't do with autonomous vehicles. Understanding where precisely our roads need to be maintained. Understanding everything about the management of a city. Where's energy being used? Where's energy being wasted? Where is water being used? All of these things are possibilities. But the question is there a business case around this?
So, for example, in autonomous vehicle, there are 5 levels of autonomy. We are at level 2 right now, or level 3.
Yeah, with Tesla, yeah.
Yeah. So, but level 5 is when I can order an autonomous vehicle and it comes with a desk or a bed, and it takes me there. There's no steering wheel.
That's right.
And that's like 5 years away or 20 years away.
It depends on who you ask. I'm in the business of not making predictions because I know how wrong they can be. But I would be surprised if somewhere in the United States in the next 2 to 5 years, I expect that somewhere in the United States, 2 to 5 years, someone is going to be able to get into an autonomous vehicle with no driver in the car, no mechanism for controlling the car, and go somewhere.
So this is what I mean by a tsunami is coming our way, because imagine you have an autonomous car, you have a traffic accident. Do you need to carry insurance? Insurance industry may completely change. Whose fault is it?
Yeah.
So there's some profound changes which we haven't grappled with. So talking about profound changes, Mashood, what profound changes, use cases you see, and even since you advise companies in Pakistan, give us some example which may hit home.
Well, there are three ways as I see, especially in business and industry. One is IoT is reimagining the business processes that are being done, making them smart and making them very efficient. The second way, which is the most profound, is perhaps enabling new business models. And the third one is enabling new experiences for your customers as well as internal employees. I'll give you a couple of examples maybe. I'll choose the one which links to the autonomous vehicle, and which is one of our customers who actually implemented it. But it is in the warehouse. So how many of you been to IKEA? Right, pretty much a lot of them. Now, when you check out, you go through the IKEA warehouse area. Now imagine most of the consumer product companies have a warehouse which is 10 times bigger than that one. And they use a lot of forklifts to take stuff from different bins and then take it. So that's a whole job. So this customer of ours in Europe, what they have done, they're using autonomous, they are supplying autonomous forklifts. So they arrange themselves, they are connected to the backend application, and that is giving them orders as to which item to pick from where to drop it, and that is done totally out. The business model implication is that they're no longer selling the forklifts to the customers. They are selling the outcome. So how much weight you carry, how many trips you take, and based on that. So the primary change that we are seeing in business models is moving from selling products to selling outcomes. Another customer who supplies, again coming back to the compressed air provider. So this is one of the largest compressed air providers. So in industrial use, you use that compressed air for many different purposes. Instead of selling the whole equipment, which runs into millions, they actually sell the outcome. And for that outcome to be known precisely, you need to have those kind of sensors inbuilt into those compressors. And then be able to have that available so that you can charge the customers based on the usage rather than that. Now, another back office application of that is that you have so much data about how your equipment is being used at your customer's premises that you are able to have predictive maintenance again. You are able to schedule those maintenance and minimize the downtime for your customers, so you are improving the customer experience, you are improving the ability.
And
so
all that is, yeah, go ahead.
And these are some of the examples of invasive IoT, what we call, which means that the manufacturer inbuilds all these sensors. There is non-invasive IoT as well. It's a very unique and smart startup that we're working with. So one of the startups called Panoramic Power, and which has created that sensor that you can just click on the power cord of all these equipments. And then they are able to see the power consumption level, and as soon as that machine is being used, for example, in this case it was a lift, as soon as it draws more voltage, more power from and that detects that. And you are able to now have insights into how the different assets are performing in relation to the linking it to the point of sale data, in relation to the queues at the customer retail store. So you are able to have those kind of insights which were not possible before. Now, we have not yet seen the kind of outcome or the business value. That's still being incubated at this point, trying to figure out how you can have better outcome, you can simplify the processes, as well as you can have more environmentally friendly operations as well.
Don't talk to me, just talk to each other. Because I don't want to be in the middle of every conversation with my smartphone. And it's becoming annoying. So to me, the best user interface is no user interface. And IoT brings that promise to reality. When things can talk to each other without waking me up and asking me a bunch of dumb questions. Talking about dumb questions. Ali, how do you see this video thing changing cities and changing traffic, changing manufacturing? Give us some specific use cases.
Sure. So earlier I mentioned the cloud giving ample processing power to the machine. On the other side of the machine are the sensors. So IoT has brought about a lot of sensors to machines, motion sensors, humidity, temperature. In fact, the compressor example my colleague here, Mashood, mentioned uses a motion sensor on the compressor that looks at the compressor vibration, and algorithmically it can detect when it's misbehaving. Video is one of the most advanced sensors in that a lot of information is being captured and we can analyze this information. What we've done is we detect, using the video information, pedestrians, cars, objects. So that is something that many companies, in fact, autonomous vehicles are using combination of cameras, lidars, radars to detect humans and objects. But what we do is using neural networks and artificial intelligence at the edge, meaning not depending on the cloud, so we can have real-time responses, real-time decisions. We can empower safety features. So cities right in the peninsula are using our solution. You can imagine most of you have used public garages in congested cities. When you're coming out of the garage, typically there's a buzzer or something if a pedestrian is going by and you hear that and you stop. But there have now been fatalities because of the smartphones. Many times pedestrians are walking on their smartphone and not aware of a car that's exiting a garage, and there have been fatalities. So what we do is we use a camera to do multiple things. First, if a pedestrian is crossing, then some sort of a warning system is given to the driver. So in this case, lights go on and buzzers go on. So the AI engine is accurately and real-time determining, okay, this is a pedestrian crossing and not a vehicle exiting. See, that's the important part. It's not just determining that it's a pedestrian, it's also recognizing that it's not another vehicle that's exiting. Secondly, we're fusing. So IoT, the other thing that IoT enables is sensor fusion. You fuse multiple sensor inputs and you create more intelligence. So if you're fusing the information of how many cars are entering and exiting the garage with the CO2 sensor in the garage, so that the fans that push the exhaust fumes out of the garage aren't always working. Up until now, these fans are working continuously and the energy consumption is very high. But if you only have 2 cars in the garage, you don't need to work at full speed, you can work intermittently. So we fuse the information from the number of cars that are entering and exiting the garage with the CO2 sensor that's sensing the fumes from the automobiles. And the fans are now working intermittently at various speeds to lower energy. And then the economics, so those are sort of safety and energy consumption features. And then the third proposition or value that we're providing these garages here in the peninsula is that there's a lot of theft with these public garages, whereby the operator is pocketing some of the money that's given in the form of cash. But by counting very precisely how many cars are going, the back-end machine knows exactly how much money should be in the register at the end of the day. So those are some.
Yeah, very specific example. Let's open it up for questions because.
Can I add one thing in
please
here?
do, yeah.
So, I want to go back to your original question, what's IoT? And if you ask 10 people what's IoT, you probably get 12 different answers, right? So let me try to tell you what are the different buckets. Number one, as Ali mentioned, there's a whole bunch of emphasis on the data input, the sensor part. I mean, I use the phone as an example of a data input. So there's a whole bunch of companies who are working on the sensor piece. There's a whole bunch of companies is how do I grab this data, how do I aggregate it, how do I index it, and how do I store it? You're talking about a lot of data here, right? Going back to the video, I mean, you're talking about a lot of data here. And again, then the processing came in. How do I do this on the edge, how do I do it on the cloud? But the most important part, and I think the audience here and the speakers talked about it, is that actionable information, right? I remember when IoT was a buzz, they were talking about, oh, your dishwasher is going to talk to your coffee machine. Okay, that's wonderful, but what is that going to do for me, right? So really think about what is the business problem we're trying to solve here, right? And again, you break IoT into 2 buckets. There's industrial IoT. Again, we heard about how the industry uses, but there's a lot of personal IoT as well, right? Maybe I want my Fitbit to be connected to my refrigerator, right? If I'm not exercising, maybe I cannot open the refrigerator and eat that ice cream, right? So there's again, what is the business problem? What is the problem you're trying to solve? I think that's really the
Use cases.
million-dollar question.
It's all about compelling use cases because IoT is not a broad thing, it's really use cases. Okay, let's take some questions.
That's a very good question. We do edge computing, and it's because processing power has become so affordable now that you can run neural networks and AI at the edge. For example, in our case, we use NVIDIA GPUs. and NVIDIA GPUs, you know, a workstation and level type of performance engines. So up until, you know, maybe a few years ago, computing at the edge, AI type of applications wasn't affordable. So you had to go to the cloud to have access to limitless or unlimited processing power. But now, depending on the application, for example, factories. Another case example, if you don't mind, I'll give another real example to associate edge computing. So inside a factory where you have many expensive machines running and, you know, the operation has to be fluid 24/7, if your connection to the cloud is disrupted, or if you're at a remote location, then the economic impact is huge. So being able to compute and make decisions locally inside the factory, i.e. edge computing, is mandatory. So it's to answer your question, there's two answers. One is the processing power is here, and two, application by application, it is very dependent whether you do edge or cloud.
Yes, and just to add to what Ali mentioned over here, one of the use cases of edge computing of a startup that I'm advising is essentially they have built this $50 kit that can be hooked with 2 simple USB cameras. You can put it on a shelf, any shelf, and then they'll be able to do image recognition of the products that are going in and going out. And some of the use cases are companies like Pepsi, Coke, Red Bull. They have these specialized coolers that they put in a lot of retail outlets. What happens is that a lot of the retail stuff, they stuff it with their competitor products. It's called cooler impurity. So what they're trying to do is solve this problem of cooler purity by having this edge level computer vision based machine learning is built into that to recognize a product, and as soon as there is some impurity aspect, then some right person is notified.
Pepsi wants to know that you're not putting Coke in the little cooler they supplied with the logo. So very interesting use case, very specific use case.
Exactly, this is very specific use case. So again, coming back to, you need to see what problem you're trying to solve with the array technology.
Yeah, exactly. Not all the applications need edge computing, right? So if it's real time, if it needs to happen now, yeah, you need edge computing. For example, there's a company that Peter Thiel just invested another 30 million. I think they raised about 80 million. They're in all the restaurants in San Francisco where you go in there, there's a guest Wi-Fi, and guess what? They collect this data, a week later they send you a coupon or whatnot, they invite you to come back. Do I really need edge computing for that? No, right? But you know, let's say there is an emergency or there is car or whatnot where something needs to happen now before an accident happens. Guess what? Doing that processing close to real time, it becomes really critical.
The car has to make a decision to take turn left or right. You don't want a cloud to be computing in the car. Questions? Other questions?
Particularly in terms of safety, but these benefits aren't guaranteed. Just because humans are terrible drivers does not necessarily mean that computers will be better. And the difficulty is that we actually don't know how safe autonomous vehicles are. And I'll just make this very concrete. Let's say that a fleet of autonomous vehicles was actually 20% better in terms of fatalities than human drivers. So, you know, we have 1 fatality per 100 million miles. Well, it has 0.8 fatalities per 100 million miles. How long would you have to drive this vehicle or this fleet of vehicles to know that with statistical significance? It turns out you have to drive them 5 billion miles. And that's like driving to Neptune and back, and then back again, and you know, making that round trip twice. And that's a problem, because if you have like a test fleet of 100 vehicles, that's going to take you centuries to cover that kind of mileage. I say all this because we, as the public, look to the government to, in many ways, to keep us safe, particularly as technology is moving very quickly, we don't know its effects. And from a regulatory standpoint, it becomes very hard to do safe regulation or good regulation if you don't know what, how safe is a technology? How do we encourage it to be safer? And so for disruptive tech, the idea of governing disruptive technologies, particularly where there's risk in them, whether we're talking about autonomous vehicles or synthetic biology or personalized medicine, nobody knows how to do this well. It is hard enough creating good regulatory frameworks around technology we understand or where the risks are low or are lower. But to do it around disruptive, potentially very risky technology where lives are at stake, That's an open-ended question. I wish I could say we were doing it well, but I don't see anyone doing it well because nobody knows.
So I think these are good points, and I think these are specifically focused for the autonomous
That's right.
vehicle, right?
That's
But
right.
there is a huge area of the use cases that we talked about where you're not talking about essentially self-driving vehicles on the road where public interest is there. You're talking about having sensors on really, for example, large cranes when there's construction happening. A lot of accidents happen of these cranes colliding because the operators do not know. So if you have sensors over here, and this use case is being implemented live as well, those cranes will stop themselves without colliding. So there are a lot of use cases like computer vision based, like what we talked about, which does not really require, even in those cases, there are some regulatory issues, but I think not as drastic as in the autonomous.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, but even in those cases, one of the big concerns comes about with privacy. If every
Yes.
part of our lives are, is that, can that be subpoenaed? Who owns that data? What right does the government have to it? What right does
The
NSA
government
have
has a
to
lot
it?
catching up to do in the legal system, and we are way ahead of them.
That's right. The technology is moving far faster than our legal system.
But I want to make sure that we do not mix what we call privacy and security. Security of the data is a whole different story. We are hearing a lot about the self-driving car and so on. God forbid if you can hack into a car and drive it into somebody and so on. I mean, that's really bad. But on the privacy side, we as a society are willing to give away our information for something getting bad. I mean, let me use an Uber as an example, right? The Uber driver knows where you live, where you're going. He has your credit card number, or not the Uber driver, but the company behind it, right? So we are willing to give, frequent flyer mileage is another example of that. We are willing to give away a lot of our privacy for getting something back. It could be a coupon, it could be a free trip to Hawaii or whatnot, right? So we as a society sometimes don't think about the balances between what is it we are giving away.
Just sharing some personal oversharing. So whenever I use Uber from home, I give my neighbor's address. I don't know if I'm fooling anybody, but I do that.
Invading the privacy of the neighborhood.
So, but that raises a really good point, right? I mean, what happens if someone in your neighborhood is flying a drone around and flies over the airspace above your house?
Yeah.
How do you know what they're doing? How do you know what pictures they're taking? When it's not obvious what you're getting back, that changes the equation.
So let's go to rapid fire lightning mode. Quick question, quick answer. Who do we got?
So,
I mean, we kind of touched on that, but yeah, go ahead.
I think from the second question perspective, probably the other panelists are much more suitable to answer the first question. We are not really at this point where we can think about upgrades, especially in the industrial use cases that have been part of it. But that is a consideration, obviously, when you're having an enterprise deployment, you need to consider that part. But that's being worked out as we are implementing.
So unless somebody is dying to answer it, another question. We can have rapid lightning mode. Yeah, over there.
Advances in sensor, radio, and antenna, whatever the recent great things we have seen.
So guys with the microphone, show some sense of urgency, guys. Right over there. Would you? You can have. So let's hear the question.
Recent advances in sensors, antenna, and radio, as far as IoT is concerned.
Sensors, antenna, radios. What's the latest? What's coming?
They're getting cheaper and cheaper every day.
Is it Zigbee all the time? Is something else? What's hot? What's not?
Cheap LiDAR is huge for us.
Cheap.
LiDAR.
LiDAR.
Yes.
Wi-Fi is going to be everywhere. We are going from a smart home to smart city to smart nation. We're going to have coverage entire US in a very near future.
Well, let's not conflate connected with smart, right?
By the way, LiDAR is very interesting. You mentioned LiDAR. I'm on the board of a company called Luminar, which is in LiDAR. I mean, we're talking about 100x reduction in the cost of LiDAR. That's going to change everything. When you can see 200, 300 meters, machine learning, not machine learning, with LiDAR, it changes so many things. Okay, other rapid fire.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, speak it.
So the joke is that the S in IoT stands for security. And IoT has been around for 40 years. There's nothing new about it. All that we're doing is we're exposing the customers to small form factor sensors.
So your point is?
The point is that now cybersecurity is going to become the Achilles heel of this thing, and that's why we're legalizing in a state of high belief that we're going to have secure systems. question I have is, how can we as an industry motivate, I mean the train has left the station now on IoT, so how can we motivate the application developers, the network designers, and the cybersecurity people to work together to create natural immunity in IoT networks?
So before we answer that, because we have 3, 4, 5 minutes left, let's take a couple of questions, then you can answer whatever you want. In the front row, yeah.
Hi, I'm an engineer. My name is Shivji. I just have a basic question regarding, adding to the previous question regarding what are the advancements. Just wanted to further clarify or make another point. If I'm an engineer working up a garage, working for want to build a startup, what are the building blocks? I know the software stuff, etc. But what are the building blocks in terms of sensors which I should be looking at today, which would take me to the market tomorrow?
So what are the building blocks and the security in IoT, whichever wants to talk
So,
to?
well, if I quickly address this second question.
Here is more big gaps in IoT.
Big gaps, okay.
So very quickly, whether it's autonomous vehicles or whether it's autonomous vehicles or any application, and in my former company we developed solutions for autonomous vehicles, platforms are normalizing the data that comes from any sensor. So whether it's a LiDAR, radar, or motion sensor, everything is being normalized at an API layer. So you don't really need to learn, unless you want to get into the sensor business, you don't really need to understand the topology and the specifics of the sensor. Well, what's happening with IoT is, across the board, platforms are bringing everything abstracting to an API layer. So really, it's programming and taking that API and coming up with a business model, with an analytic approach that can facilitate intelligence or new ways of saving money or saving lives. That's where the engineering focus should be.
And I think just to add to what Ali mentioned is, don't get fixated on the integrities of the technology. Look at the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yes.
If you are able to spot a problem, and then you have some idea, well, if that thing could speak, how would you change that? How would you reimagine that? I think once you have that idea, I think the technological pieces are easy. So don't just fixate yourself on the technology, fixate on the problem you're trying to solve.
In terms of that last question, what are the gaps in IoT? I would say it's with the word T, which is Internet of Things. But as we look ahead, particularly in the decades, which is sort of what Rand tries to do, the things are going to be IoE, the Internet of Everything, including people. And I don't know if some of you have seen, sort of Elon Musk's latest adventure, which is connecting the human brain to the internet directly, so that we're not communicating through this medium of a telephone or of our smartphones or other devices. We're just thinking the thoughts. I think to myself, what is the population of Ghana right now? And the answer appears in my mind. And this is many years off if it ever comes, but we need to expand the definition of that T.
Humanity is near.
That's quite a scary part to finish the panel on.
You're welcome.
Is there something burning which you can't wait?
Just one quick question. What are the maybe top 2 or 3 companies that are benefiting from the IoT industry?
Companies who are benefiting from IoT industry?
GE. Look at what GE is doing. GE is actually, for the last 8 years, really looking at data in everything they do, and they're making money out of it. There was actually a very good interview with their CEO on 60 Minutes. You probably can find it on YouTube. It's one of the companies which really makes sense of IoT, and they're monetizing.
But it's still early, and the good stuff is yet to come. But the thing is, it is going to touch every single business. And even your business. You may think like, yeah, it applies to everybody, but not me. No, you will be impacted. The way we live, the way cities are designed, the way food we eat is going to be pervasive. So learn about it, get ready for it, take advantage of it. It's the biggest gold rush. You're 1848, you just discovered California. So get on to the thing, and thanks for your joining. Have lunch. We'll see you at 10 o'clock.
Pleasure meeting you.